Um, yeah, it's exciting to be kind of at the end of the first week of the pilot, and I'm I know it was pretty simple, but it's still looking forward to kind of getting your demos and having you just kind of walk through the work you did, um,
Mhm.
and then we'll do the learning module on cores, cross origin resource sharing, because that's something that actually kind of plays into the app that we're building. Um, kind of one of the things I had to work around when I built it. So, and then we'll just make plans for the coming week. So, who wants to? And we can actually demo everything on production. This is the first, as far as I know, in all of Collab Lab history, is both teams demoing on production. You all didn't do that in your cohort, did you? Ever? Did you?
Maybe like the first week. We always were scrambling
We,
on the
yeah,
Sundays.
I think we somehow did it 1 week, right, Ashley?
Okay.
But it was always either like one team or the other or none. So
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I can't remember.
one of the
that's like there's some teams that are super strict and they won't let you demo unless your stuff is out in the world on production. So it's a
Okay.
we
good habit to
probably
get.
wouldn't have demoed most of the time then if that was the case.
All right. Who wants to go first?
We can start since we're both here. I think I'll be sharing my screen, and then Ashlyn will help with the narration. So just give me 1 second.
You could throw up the ACs maybe, Matthew, first. You could just
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. I have a couple of those tabs open. So this was the full issue for us.
Yeah. So it's very much like a CSS HTML part of the app, which is quite nice because we had been like just so much in React and kind of doing a lot of like heavy duty stuff. It was quite nice to do something and just actually, even though it was quite simple, there was like a few things that we both learned. And so basically what we did is we broke it up. One person did the header, one person did the footer. And so the header had to be 20 pixels along the top screen, and then we left a space for the main, which is where the two girls map was going to show up hopefully, and then the footer was a third from the bottom, I think was, or takes up a third of the screen. So kind of approached it a little bit differently. I think Matthew had committed like an hour or two before we met, and I kind of looked at what he did and I was like, that's better than what I did. So when we actually met, I was like, I like your style of doing it. So if you want to show the code, Matthew,
Yeah.
talk through a little bit of that. So basically his approach was just very niche, like he just created folders for each thing. And one thing we did kind of talk about a little bit is like whether we would just have one big app.css or we would have like individual files. I kind of thought one was good just because I like to have my CSS all in one space. So we ended up going with that. And yeah, it was just kind of like a lot of our time, we only spent an hour together and we got it done in the hour. A lot of our time was just like the placement of the footer, just centralizing that. So we just created like a footer.js, a header.js, a main.js, and then later a map.js. Yeah, it's fairly simplistic, but it was good, like just to review the bit of CSS and just think, a little bit, like we weren't really thinking about like what it'll eventually look like, but maybe we could make it look a little bit nicer and like design the button a little bit nicer and things like that down the line. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, fairly.
Yeah, and that question of like kind of having everything in one CSS file. I mean, I think this app is simple enough where you can kind of get away with that. I think mine ended up maybe a couple hundred lines of CSS or something, which isn't, like it's scannable enough.
Yeah.
So I don't, unless the team decides they want to kind of bundle CSS alongside components or something, then it's probably fine.
Yeah. Because I think we had like at one stage we had folders within folders, and we were just kind of trying to think like what visually makes it easier for the person and stuff. But yeah, that was it really. It was nice to break up, like it was two very distinctive parts that we could both take and kind of work with. And I think most of the work on Tuesday was just like trying to fix the footer because I just was like blanking on central. I think it was text align in the end, Matthew, that I figured it out afterwards. So
Okay.
always like a thing. So yeah, that was it really. It was pretty simplistic in the end, but it was nice. It was a nice thing after having come off the other cohort. It was quite nice, probably quite simple for somebody who's coming in straight off the bat.
Mhm.
A person's experience with GitHub and making branches and all that kind of stuff. Hair program, their experiences, but
Yeah,
for
for
all
sure.
simplistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was gonna say, kind of to build on that. Well, yeah, it's I think the first issue that we had, it was just good practice for people kind of, creating the JS files, creating the basic React like the functions, and then kind of hooking them in, and
Mhm.
so just kind of a good warm up for people doing that. Yeah, I mean, the hardest part was, to be honest, with the merge, and then having to kind of do some realignment once the map was in there.
Yeah.
Because when they first went in, it just took up the whole screen. I was like, wait, it just threw off all the CSS, and so I did some fiddling after the merging. But yeah.
And all those fancy calcs that y'all are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just the offset. Maybe that even deserves a comment, to be honest. That was just the offset, the header. So it didn't like create a scroll for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So something that is going to happen is we're going to have, like, especially on a small screen on a phone or something, we're going to have more information than fits in that bottom section. So we are going to need to put that in a container and allow it to scroll in the future at some point. It's not imminent, but yeah, at some point we'll have to do that.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, very good.
Great work.
Thanks.
So I guess I'll go ahead and start the demo then. So share screen. Let's share this screen first. So can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll go through the issue. So as was the other issue, this one was fairly simple. It was just getting a Google Map React package downloaded into the project and then rendering the map onto the screen. Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit of back and forth about the API key, but just so everyone's on the same page for right now, we're just going to leave it open, and then hopefully no one uses it. But basically, I guess because Andrew was saying that right now it's only for rendering a map. It doesn't really do anything else. We're not really, unless someone wants to just like render like thousands and thousands of maps, I think he was saying we're okay. So just so everyone's on the same page. But yeah, so that was our issue. And what Amber and I ended up doing is we pair programmed. Let me change the screen to code. And so what we ended up doing is we decided to, well, first of all, we installed the NPM package for Google Map React. And just so you all know, there's also a Google Maps React package. Mm-hmm. So don't type it in wrong. I discovered that pretty early on. So we installed that, and then we just created a simple component. And so what's nice about Google Map React is that it has built-in React components that you can just call, and it has props built into it so that you can just pass whatever props that you have. So it has one for the actual key, it has it for where you want the default center to be and what the default zoom is. And there's a few other options I think that we were not utilizing as well. So yeah, the most difficult thing I would say is that most of the documentation for this package is using class components. Mm-hmm. And so like, for example, they use this as like a local state, but I guess because this is a functional component, it's a little bit more flexible. So we just decided to make it a constant for right now, constant variable until we decide to change it or something like that. But so that was, I guess, the biggest challenge. But luckily, because Ashley and I just came off of TCL 5, so woo, we were all functional componented up. So basically that's all we did. And then you can also actually, so within these two opening and closing tags for the Google Map React, you can create pin objects by creating a separate component that just renders text in a certain way that you'd want it to be. And like you can style the component as well and stuff like that to put pins on the map. But we just didn't do it because we wanted to stick to the AC. So that's that. And then we just put it into the app. No, I think it was originally in index.js. Was it in app.js? And then I think one of you all moved it, right? To the component. But
to main, I think, yeah.
Oh, and also one more thing to note. I think this is the thing that also ran into the issue with the CSS like hitting each other, is that you have to specify a height or a width for the map, otherwise it doesn't render. So in case like, oh no, what happened to our map if we delete the styles? That's probably what happened.
It's so funny because I actually I didn't go back to mine and look at how I had done it, but I would have sworn I had 100% set for the height of my map, but that doesn't work here. So I still haven't been able to like figure out why that is. But yeah, nice work. Yeah, you explained the API key thing very well, but yeah, there's an API key, like there are limits to like the different things, like to how many requests can be made in like an hour or a day or whatever. We found that out with the database last time, right? So, but yeah, the key is published in the repo. It's in the issues, like it's like right there in the code. So potentially someone could find it and start to use it, but we'll just keep an eye on the usage and see if it starts to, if it jumps up really suddenly, then we might just have to swap the key out and do an environment variable in Netlify or something like that. That would make it harder, like more complicated to develop locally. We'd have to have some kind of local configuration to handle that as well. But that's why I kind of want to avoid it if we can. And then at some point, we get to the end, if you have a kind of an app that's working and you want to have it as a portfolio piece, we'll generate a new key at that point and just lock it down to the production URL so that it only works there. And that way, you can kind of have this live on after you leave. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, nice job. Good job. Yep, very good. Cool. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna present on the topic of cores. One of the fun things about let's see that. One of the kind of fun things about presenting something is you learn more about the topic yourself. So come on. Some things in Zoom are really clunky. Okay, there we go. All right. So I've used cores in the past. I've worked with it, several times, and I still learned things just even about some of the simple cases by actually having to put together a presentation. So definitely encourage you all at some point, as you're learning things, like write a blog post, make a simple presentation, find somewhere to kind of speak on the topic, because it forces you into the nooks and crannies of the details of things in a way that you might not get to if you're just kind of implementing a single thing. So anyway, so what the cores? We're going to talk about cores here. And if I can click on my screen, there we go. So before we get to cores itself, I just want to make sure we all have an understanding of a couple of concepts, because these are pretty core. See what I did? Anyway, so awkward when I was on mute and make a joke. So a request. So
I chuckled.
Okay, good, thanks. Request. So when you have a web server and in a browser or any kind of client application, a request is basically, it's text. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. All these things are text, but it's a set of headers, and we'll define headers in a second, sent to a web server by some kind of client application. Headers are, oh, well, I'll get to that in a second. A response is basically a set of headers and optionally a body of like some payload, basically sent by a web server back to a client application in response to a request. So there's headers that go back and forth in both cases. The response may or may not contain a body depending on what type of response it is. Headers are keys and values. So it'll be the name of some key, colon, and then some value. That's a header. The body, so that's the payload. It can be text, it can be binary. So JSON is an example of text. HTML is an example of text. XML, like there's a bunch of other kind of things that you could send back a simple string that says OK or something like that. Like those are all examples of text responses. Images, video, audio, like all those kinds of things are binary responses. So are those all concepts that you all are familiar with, or you kind of encountered at some point? Yep. Cool. All right. So CORS. So CORS is short for cross-origin resource sharing, and this is sort of the dry, formal definition of it. But it's a mechanism using additional HTTP headers, additional compared to just a simple request that goes back and forth, to tell a browser to give a web application running at one origin access to a resource at a different origin. So we'll define origin here in a second. So an application is executing a cross-origin HTTP request, or it requests a resource that has a different domain, different protocol, or a different port from its own. Okay, so that's all, just a lot of words. It's kind of wall of text, so we'll go through some examples. So basically, CORS is a security mechanism. That's why it exists. So a browser assumes that a request from the same origin is a safe request. Like the same people are in control of the server, like both the request and the response, right? So, so a page on HTTPS, that's the protocol, mycoolsite.com, that's the domain, makes a request to HTTPS, mycoolsite.com/api.json. That's a safe request. It's the same server, same protocol, like presumably the same people are in control of both sides of that conversation. By default, browsers assume the requests from different origins are not safe. So, a simple example is mycoolsite.com makes a request for somebadSite.com, and those are different domains. That's clearly, they're different origins. So by default, the browser says that doesn't fly, but there is this mechanism, CORS, that allows you to say specifically like, oh yeah, somebadSite.com, not so bad. Like that's fine if they make a request. So anyway, in all these examples, I'm saying XML HTTP request, but fetch works the same way. And so it's basically like when a page is making a request, like obviously the browser itself can make a request to whatever domain it wants, but it's those sub resources that are requested after the main resources requested that are the question here. So does all that stuff make sense? Like safe versus not safe, like why CORS is a thing? Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on. So some less obvious examples of cross-origin requests. So, whoops, there we go. It's HTTPS, mycoolsite.com in both cases here, right? Same protocol, same URL, same domain name, same host name, but on a different port. So port 8080 or something like that, or port 3000 or whatever. So that's a cross-origin request. Here, same way, like HTTPS makes a request to HTTP, different protocols. So those two are, that's another example of cross-origin request. Even less kind of obvious. Come on, let me click my screen zoom. Okay, is a canvas element on HTTPS mycoolsite.com requests an image resource from HTTP mycoolsite.com. So it's not just XML HTTP request. It's not just fetch. A font-based declaration in a CSS, netstyles.css, requests a font file, a binary file that's on a different protocol. That's also cross-origin. So all those cases, the browser's going to complain and say, no, that's not allowed, unless the right CORS headers are in place. All right. So, how the CORS? So, CORS is a little complicated. The case for us in our app is relatively, it's one of these simple requests. So we're just making a GET request, but GET, and everyone's familiar with GET and POST, I'm sure. POST, like you're sending data to the server. Does everybody understand anybody want to tell me what a head request is? Anybody know?
Like a header for the request?
You're on the right track. It's a request that is only asking for the headers. Okay. Yeah, you make a request, and it's like as if I'm going to make this other type of request, but just send me the headers back. I just want to know what headers you're going to give me in response to this. So you're like, why would you do that? I mean, HTTP gets complicated fast, but there are situations where you just like, hey server, if I say this, what are you going to say to me? And so you know whether to adjust the next request based on that, right? So GET, head, and POST are all considered simple requests. So here we have example.com is requesting something from service.example.com along with an origin HTTP example.com header. So again, this is the key, right? And that's the value. And so what this request is saying is, I come from this domain name. Like I'm coming from this origin. This is who I am, right? So service.example.com responds with this access control allow origin and HTTP example.com. And that's saying, oh yeah, I know who you are. It's okay for you to make this request, right? So, but because it's a simple request, we'll get into the more complicated ones in a second. It'll send back headers and the body of the response. So it's basically you make one request, you say, hey, here's who I am. The server says, oh, I know who you are. Here's the stuff you want. Okay, so, but that's because this access control allow origin header is in place. If service.example.com doesn't like who you say you are, it'll respond with an error status, usually like forbidden or something like that, like a 403 response. So if like service.example.com, if it doesn't send back this header, the browser will say it's not a secure response. The server can just say like, no, that's not, that origin doesn't fly with me, and send back a 403. And that's the simple case. Does all that make sense? Basically, like you make a request and say, I'm making this request, here's who I am. The server says, oh, I know who you are. I will grant the request and here's your stuff. Like that's basically how it goes. So the little bit more complicated case is these like pre-flight cases. So pre-flight is a little bit like that head request that I was just describing, where the browser has to go through a couple of steps. Like it's actually like a back and forth instead of just a back and forth. So example.com makes an options request. So that's another, there's get, head, post, put, delete, options, patch. There's like 4 or 5 other methods or something. So it makes an options request to service.example.com along with an origin. So that's similar to the last one. And a host header. So origin and host now instead of just origin. Service.example.com responds with that access control allow origin with the matching origin. And then it also has this access control allow methods And it's and that's basically the server saying, I know you, and here are the things you can do. Like you can do a put and you can do a delete, but you can't do a patch or something, right? It can say whatever methods it wants there. So it sends that back. It sends the headers back, but no data. So it doesn't send any data in the body of that first response. But now, example.com knows what its parameters are. It's like, okay, I am recognized, and I can do a put. So something that's already there, I can make an update to it, right? So it can come back with like, hey, here's my put request, and service.example.com will be like, okay, cool. That's, you know, I told you I know who you are and all that stuff. So that's the more complicated one. It's just like another round trip before the thing is done. And a couple more headers that get sent back and forth. Does that, this is all very dry so far. Well, it'll get more interesting in a second. But does all that kind of make sense at a high level? All right. Any questions so far? All right. So an actual use case. Okay, so the app that I built, What's Near Me, uses the Wikipedia's nearby API. That's great, but it doesn't have cores set up in a way that lets us access it directly. So, so what I had to do is I had to write what's called a pass-through proxy that has the right kind of cores settings. So, like these restrictions, these cross-origin resource sharing restrictions exist in web browsers, right? So they don't apply to a web server. So if you've ever done stuff on a server where you make a curl request, like there are no cores issues with that. Like it's like in a browser setting where the browser makers are trying to protect end users from malicious stuff happening. That's where cores applies. So that's what allows us to write a pass-through proxy. So this is the proxy that I wrote for the app, and it's the same one that we use. Like you'll actually see your URL is in this script. So it's PHP. Nobody make fun of PHP. It's very useful. It's ubiquitous. So and its syntax is very much like JavaScript. So it's relatively easy to learn. Anyway, so the proxy starts off by saying if we have an origin header, and this is a constant within PHP land for that kind of origin header in the right capitalization and all that stuff. I'm just going to like set that to a value, and then I'm going to say here are the origins that I will allow to receive responses. So localhost 3000 because that's where we develop. What's Near Me because that's my production app, and then this is your production app here. So so then we say if the origin that's being presented to us is in the array of allowed origins, then we're going to send back these headers. So we're going to say access control allow origin, and we're going to say the origin back to the requester. I actually don't actually need this one, the credentials one. We're not doing anything with credentials. And I also don't really need this one, this allow headers. The important ones are the origin itself and then the methods that are allowed. So we're only going to allow GET requests, and we're only going to allow it for this particular origin, or one of the origins in this array. If those things, if if the origin is not correct, we're going to send back a 403 forbidden thing, and we'll just exit right there. So we're done. Now, if we make it through this little gauntlet, and then we ask if it's an options request, we're just going to stop at that point, send the headers back that we've created here, and be done. So that's if it's a pre-flight request, we're just going to stop there. So if we make it through, let's see, I guess if there's no origin set by all these headers are kind of optional. Like a client could just make whatever request it wants, could set the wrong headers, it could spell them wrong. Like there's nothing that there's no magic about them. So if the origin's not actually set, we're just going to tell the client that it's a bad request, like it's not formed correctly. So a generic sort of 400 error. So we might have exited here, we might have exited here, we might have exited here, but if we didn't, we're gonna we're going to look for some get parameters. And then we're going to find out whether those parameters are within the right parameters. So do we have a lat? Do we have a long? Are they both numeric? Are they within a range that makes sense for latitudes and longitudes? So, you know, between 90 and negative 90 for latitude, and between 180 and negative 180 for longitude. If all those things are true, then we're actually going to finally make the request from the Wikipedia API. So we put the URL together. It has lat long buried in there in a couple places. Then we initiate a curl session. We set some options, blah, blah, blah. We get the output from the curl. So we actually make the request. We capture the output. We set a header that tells the client that what you're getting is JSON. So we're getting a JSON object. And then we echo the output. So we actually kind of barf out the response. And at that point, we'll quit. If none of these things are true, if any of these things are not true, so I should say. So maybe we have a lat, we don't have a long, or we have a lat and long, but one of them's not numeric or whatever. Then we're going to tell the client again that it's a bad request, it's malformed. So that's the pass-through proxy. I think it's secure enough-ish. I don't know, who knows? I'm not really an expert in this stuff, but it seems to, I think it's fine. It'd be pretty tough to figure out a way through that unless there are some vulnerabilities in some of these methods. So it does tend to work. So let's see, where are we in that? Okay, so we're gonna look at my app. So what I've done here is I've actually set it up so that it's calling from Wikipedia directly first. So let's see, and you'll see this is that request. Zoom's window management is terrible. So here's that request, and it failed. So you see an error down here. It's saying it's blocked by CORS policy. No access control, allow origin headers present on the requested resource, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of as we expect, no pins or anything. So I'm gonna just change this around. All right. So I know I should purchase a blind text. So that when you share your screen on Zoom, it takes over your windows somehow. So
It's always the demo curse.
yeah, no. I'm just gonna move this out of the way completely and just move that out of the way. All right. Okay, so now we're calling from the pass-through proxy, which is on my server, and it didn't reload the page, but it did the right thing, right? So come on, Zoom, just let me use my windows. All right, so pins. All right, cool. So here it is. So nearby.php, and we will see that we have access control allow origin. This is running on localhost 3000, so it matched, and it allows the get method, so it completed successfully. So we got back a thing with a bunch of places, and we can render them as pins on the map. So that's the magic of CORS. Any questions about any of that, like the proxy or headers, or?
Can I just ask you what the curl session you were talking about at the end was? I've never heard that term curl before.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So curl is a utility that's built into most Unix systems. So stupid Windows. All right, there we go. So if you if you go to your terminal, you'll see curl. Curl is basically just a way to make requests. on the server. So it'll just go and get something and just, then you can do, there's all kinds of options of what you can do with it. You can basically, anything that you can do in a browser and probably more, you can set up a curl request that can make the same type of request,
Cool.
including spoofing all kinds of headers and stuff. If you want to, you can make a curl request as if you're an iPhone or something if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like it's really versatile.
Wow, that's very cool. I've never heard
Yeah.
of that.
I also had a quick question. So I've never used PHP before. And so I understand the whole need for the proxy, but why do you use PHP in this case? And would there be like a different way to do it?
Oh yeah, you could do this in any language you wanted. We could probably, there's probably even a way to do it on Netlify. I didn't know that in the moment. Like I knew how to do it this way, so I just did it this way. I mean, that's the only reason really. I showed this to somebody at work and they're like, you want me to put that in a node function for you? I'm like, no, that's fine, it works.
So is it just because this particular script doesn't run in the browser?
Yeah, correct. This runs on my web host. So, and my web host has PHP installed. So it's just an easy way for me to kind of write the script. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Good question.
Where is this located in your code to like make sure that it runs when you're?
Yeah, this is actually located on a completely different server than what you all are touching. So, it's like my own web hosting thing that I use for like a bunch of other stuff. So, so it's I wouldn't call it the greatest pattern to follow. Like if you're in the real world building something, you probably want all those things kind of living in the same place or whatever. Just because the React app that I was deploying to Netlify, there's really no backend to it. So I was basically just having it be a front end that just, a dumb front end that calls APIs. So I needed to put the API itself somewhere else that had access to curl and stuff. So that's why it's structured.
How do people usually do this for apps that are like used by a lot of people? Do they end up creating kind of like a middle ground API that their own app pings instead?
Yeah, it depends a lot. There's a lot of factors that go into that. It's a really good question. So as an example, at Zapier right now, my team is building, we're rebuilding our kind of blog, the stack that runs our external facing blog. We're hooking that up to a system called Contentful, which is what's called a headless CMS. So it's a content management system. You go in there and you can write an article and say who the author is and all that kind of CMS stuff. But the only thing that it knows how to do is spit out JSON via APIs. So we're building a front end that talks to their back end basically and says, I want to show this article, give me the data, it gives the data, we display it. That works because they have the right like CORS headers and stuff set up so that we can access those APIs directly. So, if there are other situations where you might be taking 3 or 4 different APIs and kind of consuming them and putting it into one thing that you want to send back to your client, to the client application. In that case, there are a bunch of strategies for whether you might be caching some of that information depending on how often it changes. There's a bunch of things that could go into how you kind of do that. The easiest thing is to have the API and the client kind of live on the same origin. Then you don't have to worry about all this CORS business. But it's not uncommon to have your APIs are living on a subdomain or something, so that it's just easier to kind of manage from an infrastructure standpoint. So does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
I feel like I talked all around it. But all right, cool. So I think the last thing we're gonna do is will it CORS. Y'all get this reference? Remember the will it blend thing? Yeah, right. Okay. But there's a site that will actually. It's so hard to know, like, will this work or that work and stuff. So there's a site called Will It CORS, and you can put in, some URL and say, and we're going to do a GET request. and we're not going to do any of this custom stuff. And it'll tell us like whether or not that request would pass. I don't think that should have passed actually, but anyway, it's as I was researching this, it seemed like kind of a cool little tool to understand. And then you can also, like, it has a bunch more options. So if you're doing more complicated stuff, you know, pre-flights and partial responses, and like there's a bunch of stuff, you know, HTTP, you know, has a lot of stuff that you can do in different circumstances. You can customize all this stuff. You can put in your own headers and stuff to see if it's still going to work. So just kind of wanted to show you all that. So I think that's it. Any other questions about cores? Oh yeah, this site actually has examples of how to implement cores in a bunch of different servers and languages and stuff. So it'll, you know, kind of, it gives you just like the simple case. Like I had in my access control allow origin header, I had specific URLs because I didn't want it to be open to just anybody. But you can also just put an asterisk and make your API open to anybody who wants to hit it. So public APIs, you know, like government data and stuff like that. Sometimes they'll have this header so that people can, like anybody can consume it. And then they'll restrict it by like API keys and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's the presentation. Any other questions about cores? It's fun, huh?
It was really helpful, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, good.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess I should actually keep sharing because we're going to talk about the coming week's work. Let's see. This time I'm going to screen share a specific screen, and then I won't have this problem with not being able to click on stuff. So there's sort of stuff from last week in the done column. Excellent. The next two things that are up are these two. So yeah. So we're going to get the users lat and long. So modern web browsers have this API navigator.geolocation.watchPosition that will prompt the user. You know, like if you go to a website and it says, you know, allow me, like a e-commerce website or something, it'll say, allow me to use my location. That's what's happening behind the scenes. As this API is getting called, the browser prompts you. You say allow or deny, and then once the user allows it, it will then just watch the user's position, the device's position actually, and anytime it changes, it'll send a new lat long. So, you know, if you're driving, it's sending them kind of almost constantly. If you're sitting in one place, it's actually, when you first turn it on, sometimes it'll send a bunch of requests and they're kind of not really where you are, and then it kind of dials it in to where you actually are. Like the device is actually triangulating like different like access points and stuff to figure out where your location actually is. So it's talking to satellites. If you're on a cell phone, it's talking to at least 3 cell towers and trying to dial in your location. It gets more and more accurate until it kind of gets within a certain range, and then it'll settle down and stop sending quite so many updates. So the idea here is the user hits a button to say, yeah, I want to share my location. Then we call this navigator.geolocation.watchPosition. That prompts the user. They hit allow. Once they've clicked the button should change to a disabled state. The text on the button should change, you know, to say something like, you know, location is shared as opposed to share location or something like that. Once, you know, if the user did click allow, then we should see like a pulsing blue dot or some other kind of indicator of where the user is on the map, and the map should center on the dot.
Okay.
So here, you know, I click share location, I get the allow, I hit allow, and oh, there we go. All right. I have the little blue blue dots happening, and it's centered on where I actually am. It's pretty close to. All right, and then we'll get to that later. All right, and then the other team is going to work on this other one, which is to actually do our first fetch of places close to whatever the location of the map is. So you can see where this is heading next week, but for now, that team is just going to use sort of, doesn't matter what location, but just we want to make sure we can connect to that API and kind of pull stuff back. So we're using the Wikipedia API. So we're going to use that, the nearby API that I wrote. It takes these two query parameters, lat and long. So that's the structure of the request. Based on from the information you get back, you're going to want to render pins at. I mean, it doesn't have to be 24 pixels if you decide it's better to be something else, but as a recommendation, 24 by 24 pixels, a little thumbnail of the image that's returned when there's an image present. There's not always an image present, so you might show a default pin image if there's no actual thumbnail. And then the other case that you need to be careful about, I ran into errors with this at first, was that there are places where there are going to be no pins within the radius of the request. So the request is, here's a center, and within a certain radius, I don't actually know what it is, like half a kilometer or something like that. Like whatever pins are in that radius, show me all the pins. But there are plenty of places. I mean, the middle of the ocean is obvious, but there are places in the middle of Canada or even Oregon where there are no pins within that radius. So you need to handle that case gracefully too. When I first wrote it, I had an error and people were like, I have a blank screen. And I'm like, okay, so I had to figure out why it was erroring out. But so yeah, so then you're going to have something like this where you have these pins. These are the pins showing up on a map based on the user or the whatever location you pass to it. So
Is the radius tied to the zoom, or?
it's not. That'd be a good future card, actually, a good future issue, because it's not. Like in my app, it's not, and it is okay. But there are definitely times you're zoomed out and you're like, why are they all clumped on top of each other? So, but yeah, it's a good idea. I could add a card for it. You could add a card for
Okay.
it.
We'll take a look at it later.
Yeah, this is your project. This is you can own the board too. Add issues if you want to, or if you find bugs and want to add a card to the board or whatever, do that as well. Totally valid. So, who wants to do which one? Get that out of the way. Oh, y'all know who you're paired up with, right?
Yeah.
Jen and Matthew are together. Ashlyn and Amber.
I'm open, Jen.
Yeah, I'm open too. Do you have any preferences, Aisling?
Not really, no. Both sound interesting, so I'm happy.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe the API one. For me, I don't know how you feel, Matt.
Number 4, the fetch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works for me.
Cool. Boom. It's all yours. And then I'll assign.
I'm just thinking of like so many websites that I use that ask me for my location all the time. Like so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of the time I hate it when I'm on a website, but then like in this case, it's like, oh, that's actually really useful. But it's still like when I first built the app, I just had it like prompt you right away and stuff. It's actually still better to like have the user press a button and like kind of opt into it, right? So that's why like we have that button there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here it's just share location, and then when you click it, it turns to location shared. So something like that. But is there any other questions about this one that you might have. Let's see. The one thing, like something that you kind of need to handle, I guess, is like this. Like I was saying at first, this API returns a lot. So you don't want to do it, like you don't necessarily want to be responding to every time it sends something to you, but we'll handle that kind of down the road too.
Okay.
But just make sure that like your callback isn't like doing anything too expensive, because it's going to get hit 100 times in the first couple seconds probably, and then it'll start to settle down.
Right.
So yeah, we'll figure out how to.
How do you usually mitigate that? Would you like use a set timeout or?
So that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's let's see, fetch delay. So down here, we're gonna sort of explicitly handle it by so another naive thing that I did when I first wrote this was I was making a call to the API every time I got a location. And so they would just stack up and most of them wouldn't return, and it would kind of lock the app up and stuff. So yeah, the thing we want to do, one of the things we want to do is only ever make one fetch at a time. So it can be sending us all the locations it wants, but we're only going to make the next fetch once the previous one is returned, right? And then this story is actually about, in addition to that, like that's always going to be the case. The user may want to add a delay to it. So these fetches and all that stuff, they cost battery basically. Like if you're on a device and you're walking around, your location's not changing all that often. So why make all those requests? If you're driving though, and you want to keep track of what's around you, you want it to be basically as fast as it can, like making requests, right? So we'll handle that in a couple of weeks, but yeah, for now, we'll just just like tracking the location. We'll get a location. We will, kind of center the map on the user's location. So don't worry too much about it yet. Like I'm making it sound more scary than it really is. Just when it changes, center the map on it, show the dot at the center.
And then, so I think the API issue relies a lot on the other issue. And so should we just decide on where the state for the user's latitude and longitude is going to live, so that we could probably pass into a prop for the component that we're probably going to build for the API fetch or something like that?
So what I'd say about that, I mean, the AC here is really just to use any location. So, you can center it on downtown Portland or something if you want.
Okay.
And then next week we'll actually worry about hooking it up to the user's real location.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good way. It's we call it looking around corners, right? So, but that's exactly what we will need to deal with next week, is some of that state. But for now, we're just going to capture it and probably not do much with it. But
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Nice. Feeling prepared for the week?
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah, we'll make sure that Amber watches the video and stuff so she gets the context and everything. Yeah, I mean, just hit me up in Slack. Let me know what questions you have as you dig into it, what kind of problems you run into. Debugging this stuff can be kind of tricky, so, be noisy if you want to hear some strategies about how to do that when you get stuck with something and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
For the learning module, that helps a lot. It really does help a lot.
Oh, good. Cool. Yeah. It's a little bit of a dry topic, headers and whatever, but.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like personally, no one's ever explicitly explained it to me. Like I knew what it was, but I was like, how do I work around this? And everyone's kind of like, eh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but it's not magic. It's literally text that gets sent back and forth. Cool. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for all your hard work and participating and feedback and all kind of stuff too. If you get into this and you're like, this is 2 weeks of work, what are you doing to us? Let me know too. I don't know if there's a way to split it out, but we can try. So, yep. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Go
Thank you,
forth. Yeah. Thank you.
Andrew.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.